Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The business trip had wrapped up sooner than expected. The city lights blurred past as my taxi made its way through the rain-soaked streets. The unexpected early return tingled with the prospect of surprising Grace, my wife of 5 years. We had kissed goodbye only 3 days ago, her perfume lingering like a promise. Now, the thought of her smile as I walked through the door propelled me home with a growing eagerness. As the taxi pulled up to our quaint 2-story house, nestled at the end of a cul-de-sac, everything seemed as quiet as I had left it. The porch light was off, a sign that Grace probably wasn't expecting me until the weekend. I paid the driver, grabbed my suitcase, and headed up the walkway, my heart a light drum in my chest. Unlocking the front door, I stepped inside, the familiar scent of pine and vanilla greeting me. "Grace, I'm home early." My voice echoed slightly, too bright in the dim hallway. There was no response, the house remained unnervingly silent. I frowned, dropping my keys in the bowl by the door. As I walked toward the kitchen, a faint rustling sound caught my attention. It seemed to come from upstairs, our bedroom. My brow furrowed. Perhaps Grace was asleep and hadn't heard me. I discarded my jacket and made my way up the stairs, the sound growing clearer with each step. It was definitely not the sound of someone sleeping. The murmurs became distinct as I approached the bedroom door, now slightly ajar. Confusion twisted inside me. "Grace?" I called out again, softer this time. The voices hushed abruptly. My hand trembled on the doorknob. Something was very wrong. Pushing the door open, the scene before me unfolded like a grotesque tableau. Grace, her hair a wild mane, was entangled with a man on our bed. The shock of seeing her so vulnerable, so intimate with someone else, sent a cold rage spiraling down my spine. They scrambled, grabbing for sheets, their faces a mix of shock and shame. "James." The man was the first to speak, his voice cracking in disbelief. It was Eric, her childhood friend, his features twisted in a guilty grimace. Grace was crying now, her hands clasped in front of her as if in prayer. "Mark, I can explain," she stammered, tears streaking her face. My whole body turned to ice. "Explain." My voice was a thunderclap, bouncing off the walls. "With him?" "How long, Grace?" It wasn't supposed to happen," she sobbed, her voice muffled by her hands. "Eric came over to talk about the reunion and one thing led to another." Eric, now halfway dressed, moved toward me, his hands raised in a futile gesture of peace. "Mark, I swear, it was never meant to hurt you. We just—" I didn't let him finish. "Get out," I spat, pointing to the door. My entire being trembled with a cocktail of betrayal and fury. Eric didn't need telling twice, he grabbed his remaining clothes and fled the room. The air was thick with the scent of betrayal as I turned my gaze back to Grace. She was still on the bed, a crumpled figure of despair. "I thought he didn't love me back then, Mark. I chose you because I thought you were safe." "Safe?" I echoed, the word bitter in my mouth. "I was just, your consolation prize." Her plea was drowned out by the ringing in my ears. "I never wanted this," she whispered through her tears. But it was too late. The damage was done. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. This betrayal wouldn't go unanswered. I would ensure that our paths never crossed again after this. Divorce was the only answer, revenge, a close second. Turning on my heel, I left the room, her cries fading into the background. The house suddenly seemed alien, a shell of the home I thought I knew. Tonight marked the end of one story and the bitter beginning of another. The morning after was gray and overcast, a fitting backdrop for the turmoil churning within me. After a sleepless night on the couch, my resolve hardened with the dawn. Today, I would set things right, or at least, start to. I called in sick at work, my voice hollow as I spoke to my boss. The routine of normalcy felt like a distant memory. Once off the phone, I dialed another number, one I hadn't used in years but remembered like a scar. Hello. The voice on the other end was cautious, unfamiliar yet not. Leo, it's Mark. Mark Benson. I need a favor, I said, skipping pleasantries. There was a pause, a breath held and then released. Mark. I haven't heard from you since college. What's going on? It's about Grace. She's been cheating on me with an old flame. I want to make her pay, legally. I need the best divorce lawyer you know. Leo had become a private investigator after a stint in law enforcement, a pivot I remembered him mentioning in one of our last conversations. His network was extensive, his resources vast. I'm sorry to hear that, man. I know someone who can help, but are you sure about this? Yes, more than ever, I replied, my jaw set. All right, I'll send you the details of a good lawyer, and if you need anything dug up for the proceedings, let me know. As I ended the call, another part of my plan crystallized. Grace wasn't going to see this coming. She had chosen to betray me, and now she would face the consequences. Mid-morning, I drove to the office of the lawyer Leo recommended. The building was stark, modern, the glass facade reflecting the cloudy sky above. Inside, I was greeted by the sharp click of heels on marble as a woman approached. She extended her hand, her grip firm. Mr. Benson. I'm Sarah Novak. Leo told me you might be coming. Let's talk in my office. Sarah's office was sleek, lined with books and awards. As I recounted the events, her expression remained neutral, professional. We can file for divorce under infidelity, and considering your circumstances, the settlement could be significantly in your favor. Good, I said simply. I want to make sure she doesn't walk away with anything. Sarah nodded, taking notes. We can start by gathering evidence. I assume you have some proof of the affair. Text messages, emails. I can get more if needed, I responded, thinking of the devices left unguarded at home. Let's start with what you have. I'll also need a list of all shared assets and any other information that could be relevant to your case. After leaving Sarah's office, I felt a mix of relief and a growing sense of dread. The next step was to confront Grace again, this time to discuss the impending divorce. When I returned home, Grace was in the living room, her eyes swollen from crying. She looked up, startled, as I walked in. Mark, we need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, I interrupted, my voice cold. I'm filing for divorce. Grace gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Mark, please, can't we just? No, Grace. It's over, I cut her off, the finality in my voice echoing around the room. As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom to gather some belongings, the weight of the broken vows and lost love bore down on me. But I pushed forward, fueled by a need for retribution that felt both righteous and toxic. The next few days were a blur of motions and emotions. My mornings were filled with calls from Sarah, each conversation a step deeper into the legal labyrinth of divorce. By day, I collected evidence, a painstaking process of sifting through emails and messages, capturing screenshots, and documenting everything that could prove Grace's betrayal. One afternoon, as I was sorting through a stack of bank statements in our home office, the doorbell rang. Tension tightened my shoulders as I walked to answer it. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a suit, carrying a briefcase, another emissary from the world I was now entrenched in. I opened the door. Can I help you? Mr. Benson. I'm Thomas Reddick, Eric's attorney. May I come in? I hesitated but stepped aside, letting him enter. What does Eric want? Thomas placed his briefcase on the kitchen table and opened it, pulling out a sheaf of papers. My client is very distressed about the situation between you and your wife. He wants to ensure that this doesn't escalate further. I scoffed, crossing my arms. He should have thought of that before. Mr. Benson, I understand you're upset. However, Eric is prepared to offer a financial settlement to avoid any defamation or unnecessary complications. He's very sorry about everything. The audacity of the offer fueled my anger. Tell Eric he can keep his money. This isn't about money, it's about betrayal. Thomas nodded, not missing a beat. I'll convey your message. But consider the offer. It might help you move on. After he left, the silence of the house seemed to echo with the ghosts of my shattered trust. I shook my head, dismissing the ludicrous proposal, and returned to my gathering of evidence. That evening, as I was backing up the collected data to a drive, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Curiosity piqued, I opened it. Mark, this is Jenna, Grace's friend. We need to talk. It's about Grace and what she's planning. Meet me tomorrow at the Riverside Cafe. 10 a.m. Don't tell her. The message sent a ripple of suspicion through me. What was Grace planning? Was it a counterattack in the divorce or something else? The next morning found me at the Riverside Cafe, a quaint little spot by the river known for its strong coffee and peaceful views. Jenna was already there, a brunette with sharp eyes, stirring her coffee nervously. As I sat down, she wasted no time. Mark, I'm worried about Grace. She's not handling this well. She's talking about leaving town, disappearing. Disappearing? I frowned, the information twisting in my gut. Yes. She feels cornered, desperate. I think she might be serious. She's scared of what you could do, legally and otherwise. The news hit hard. Despite everything, the thought of Grace on the run, scared and alone, was not what I wanted. Thanks for telling me, Jenna. I don't want her to run. I want her to face the consequences of her actions, legally. Jenna nodded, her expression somber. Just thought you should know. She's planning it soon. After we parted ways, my mind raced with this new development. The game had changed, and now, more than revenge, I needed to ensure that Grace faced the reality of our broken vows, not escape it. The stakes were higher, the path forward murkier. As I walked back to my car, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves and sending ripples across the river. It seemed even nature was bracing for the storm ahead. The chill of an early morning mist wrapped around me as I sat in my car, parked a block away from our house. Today was the day everything would end, one way or another. My phone, loaded with messages and emails, buzzed incessantly, but I ignored it, my focus laser-sharp on the task at hand. A text from Jenna last night confirmed that Grace was planning to leave today. She didn't specify a time, only that I should be prepared. My mind was a whirlwind of betrayal, legal strategies, and an unexpected, lingering sorrow for the loss of what we had, or what I believed we had. As I watched, Grace emerged from the house, her suitcase rolling behind her. She looked around nervously before heading towards the taxi idling at the curb. I waited for a heartbeat, then followed, my car silent and determined. The taxi wove through the city towards the bus station, a hub of escapes and farewells. Parking a safe distance away, I watched as Grace dragged her suitcase inside. I grabbed my phone and the folder filled with all the gathered evidence, and followed her in. The station was crowded, the air thick with the smell of coffee and diesel. I found her at a bench, her head down, phone in hand. Stepping forward, I cleared my throat. Grace. She looked up, startled, her eyes wide with shock. Mark. What are you? I know you're planning to run. My voice was steady, devoid of the anger that had fueled the last few days. She stood up, her posture defensive. I can't stay, Mark. Not after everything. I'm not here to stop you, I said, holding up the folder. But you should know, everything's out. The cheating, the lies, it's all documented here. It's going to the lawyers, the courts, everyone. Grace's face paled. Why? Why do this? Because you need to face the consequences, I replied coldly. But, Mark, there's something you don't understand. Her voice was shaky, her eyes flickering with a desperate sadness. There's nothing left to understand, I interrupted, the bitterness creeping back. No, Mark, listen. It wasn't just me. Eric, he had a plan. The statement stopped me short. What plan? He used me, Mark. It wasn't just an affair. He's been gambling, deeply in debt. He thought he could manipulate you through me, to get money. The revelation hit like a physical blow. What are you saying? I found out too late. He planned to have me convince you to invest in his business, to bail him out. I refused, and he threatened to expose the affair. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with a sickening clarity. The betrayal was deeper than I had imagined, a wound not just of the heart but a potential ravaging of my finances and life. So, you were going to run, to get away from him? Yes. And from this mess, she added, gesturing to the papers in my hand. The station announcements blared overhead, a call for final boardings. Grace looked at the announcement board, then back at me. I'm leaving, Mark. It's better this way. I stared at her, the woman I once loved, now a stranger bound by a web of lies and deceit. The hatred and anger I had felt began to ebb, replaced by a profound sadness for what could have been. Go then, I said quietly. But we're through. And I will proceed with the divorce. You may not be around, but your actions will face the light. Grace nodded, tears streaming down her face, and turned to leave. As she disappeared into the crowd, I felt a chapter of my life closing, bitter and twisted, yet necessary. Returning to my car, I felt the weight of the morning's revelations. The drive home was long and contemplative. By the time I parked in the driveway of what was once our shared dream, I was alone, truly alone, but resolved to rebuild from the ashes of deception. As the final lines of our story faded, the house loomed quiet and empty, a stark monument to the cost of misplaced trust and the harsh lessons learned in its wake.